Asho. Namo Amitabhats. Namo Amitabhats. Namo Amitabhats. Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing well and are continuing to stay healthy and safe. Before I begin my Dharma talk, I wanted to briefly introduce myself, as some of you who are listening in may not know who I am. My name is Jamie Shimizu. I am currently co-teaching the 4th through 8th grade class for the Temple's Dharma School. I have been a Dharma School teacher for some time now. I won't tell you how long I've been teaching for, but I have thoroughly enjoyed it and continue to do so. I have been coming to this temple ever since I was pretty much born. My parents and grandparents used to be active members. And another fun fact, which will also be the last fact about myself, I worked at the temple as the office secretary for a few years as well. All right, now that we have the introduction out of the way, I will move on to my Dharma talk. I'm going to be very honest with you. Figuring out what to talk about for this Dharma talk was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I brought it up to a friend of mine and they suggested talking about something I am currently going through and relating that to the Dharma. That pretty much opened up Pandora's box for me, as so many things came to mind, but there was one thing that stood out that I wanted to share. So today I will be talking a bit about my grandparents and relating it to impermanence and having mindful moments. So just a brief intro into my grandparents, or to my grandparents. Otherwise, this would be a lot longer of a Dharma talk. They have been longtime members at the Buddhist Temple of San Diego and were very active when they were younger and well into their 70s and 80s. From that, my mom and aunts grew up going to the temple, attending Dharma school and participating in JUYBA, the temple's high school age youth group. And in turn, my parents brought my two brothers and I to temple as well. So to say the least, the temple has been part of our family history for quite some time. Just to put into perspective, my grandpa will be 91 in April, so this month, and my grandma just turned 88 years young in November of last year. A few months ago, my mom, aunts, as well as my grandma, made the decision to move both of my grandparents into an assisted living facility not too far from where their house is in Chula Vista. This decision was made mostly to alleviate some of the stress on my grandma, who did most of the housework and chores since my grandpa was diagnosed as having onset dementia. So you can imagine how hard it was trying to run the house as you normally would, with cooking, cleaning, yard work, other chores, and all that jazz that comes with owning your own home at an older age. Since moving into the new place, life for my grandparents has been quite the roller coaster ride, not only for them, but for my mom, aunts, and the rest of the family as well. A lot had changed for them as they went from having a large living space, their own one-story, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, to a small living space. Their places equivalent to a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment with a kitchenette, so they don't have a full kitchen. They lost a lot of their open space, so like having a large open backyard, to living in a building with 7 floors. They had to be placed on the memory care floor as my grandpa has onset dementia and lost the ability to cook with the stove, come and go as they please. They actually need to let the floor nurses know when they are leaving, and many other freedoms that you may not think about as being important until you can no longer have them. They also had to get used to having people check in on them so many times a day to give them medication and kind of just check to make sure they're doing good, even during the middle of the night, to ensure they were there and that they're doing okay. The good thing is they don't have to worry about doing a lot of the housework tasks that were getting harder for them to do. So, how are my grandparents doing? You might be wondering. Well, I think my grandma has been adjusting pretty well, but my grandpa, on the other hand, he's been having a hard time adjusting, asking my grandma multiple times a day when they will be going home and where their car is parked at. He even keeps his house keys and car keys with him at all times and is pretty much dressed and ready to go at the drop of a hat, which actually tends to put a bit of stress on my grandma. My mom and I try to go over every weekend to visit them. And most of the time, we bring them food for dinner since they don't get to eat certain things like Japanese food or hamburgers or a lot of different stuff, which they are always grateful for. In the very beginning, it was really hard to see how this change had affected them, mostly with my grandpa. There were times when you could see the confusion and pain in his eyes and having to explain as best as you could why they were there. And just a side note, trying to talk to my grandpa is hard in general since he developed really bad hearing loss. I think as a possible side effect from being in the military when he was a young man to uh, working as a gardener for many, many years. Then having to explain it all again to an extent since he didn't remember the last time. I think the hard part about this situation and the time leading up to this move in terms of the onset dementia and watching memories fade away within my grandpa and even noticing that my grandma's short-term memory was not that good either was the realization that my grandparents had changed and are continuing to change with every single day. They are, as the saying goes, getting older, which means uh, all parts of them, whether physically and mentally, are getting older as well. This also applies to all of us as we are constantly changing. There is impermanence all around us. For some time, I used to think impermanence applied to pretty much everything except people in general. So that included everyone I knew and myself as well, since most of the examples that I heard while growing up to present day were about changing seasons and the time change and even food, like how ice cream and how it melts. But realization in anything hits all of us at different times because we're all different from one another. Impermanence is inevitable. It is pretty much life itself. We all wouldn't be where we are today if the idea of impermanence did not exist and everything stayed the same. Now, where does the importance of being mindful and having mindful moments come in? For me, with my grandparents, I actually didn't realize this until last year. Towards the end of last year, prior to them moving, I started to spend more time with my grandparents. So on my days off, I would go visit them, take them to lunch, and spend a few hours afterwards at the house with them, even though most of the time it consisted of me doing a puzzle while they did their regular routines around the house with some conversations here and there with my grandma. And once in a while with my grandpa too, even though he would reminisce about a time that was way before me and something I didn't even know about. The more time I spent with them, the more I saw how much they had changed and how much of the grandma and grandpa I used to know had been lost. The more time I spent with them, the more I became upset with myself at why I hadn't done this earlier. But at the same time, I also started to realize how much it meant to spend time with them, to spend time with them in the present moment. This realization came when one of my aunts at one point sent me a text saying that my grandma had told her how much my visits had meant to her and that they mean more to her than I will ever know. From that point on, I wanted to be sure to spend as much time with them as I could before they couldn't remember anymore, and to have as many mindful moments as I can with them while they are still here. Fast forward to present time, this move to the new place, without a doubt, has been hard on my grandparents, even more so for my grandpa. Usually, when my mom and I are on our way to go there to visit, negativity in terms of how they're doing and thinking I wish I could do more tends to cloud my thoughts. But once we walk through the door and see them, that negativity seems to instantly vanish. Even though my grandpa doesn't recognize who I am at times, which he kind of does with my brothers and his grandchildren most of the time, he seems to think I'm one of my aunts and that me and my mom are sisters. That actually seems to fade away once we get settled and spend time with them. I always thought mindful moments had to be something extraordinary, like going on unforgettable trips or doing once in a lifetime things. But I have come to realize and come to learn that mindful moments can be anything, no matter how big or how small they are. It just requires being in the present moment with whoever you want those moments to be with. So for me, with my grandparents, those mindful moments are when I'm watching TV with them, taking them out to lunch, going to the store to pick up stuff they need, or even just sitting in silence for a short moment. Those things are what makes them happy and what makes me happy as well. So just to conclude, I want to urge everyone to think about what mindful moments, what that means to you, and what mindful moments are, what that looks like. Because things are always changing and impermanence is always present. So that will conclude my Dharma talk for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you all get to see me again, or I get to see you. It's mostly you seeing me next time. So I will close with Gasho. Namo Amidavits, Namo Amidavits, Namo Amidavits.